Welcome everybody. So this week, as we continue on with the story of Yosef in Torah portion Miketz, at the end, we open with 2 years have gone by. Now, all of a sudden, it is not a fellow servant whom has had a dream and could not interpret the dream or get anyone to, but this time, as we will soon see, that it is Pharaoh of Egypt who has a dream. Now, that dream would be a nebuah or a prophecy that would surely take place. Now his dream was that beside the Nile River there came up out of it 7 healthy and sleek and fat cows who began feeding in swamp grass. Sounds like a dream, huh? But wait, because next came out of the river 7 more miserable looking cows at the edge of the river. Now, not only were they sickly looking, but they also cannibalized and ate the 7 good-looking, sleek, and fat cows up. Well, notice that even though it says the sleek cows ate up the fat cows, that the sleek never became filled or fat. Something to think about ahead of time. Now, this situation with the second part of the dream was not really a dream as you look of it, but it was more instead like your worst dream. Now, at this point, Pharaoh of Egypt wakes up. Now, he was probably thinking it was just a dream, but let us think for a moment. Yeah, it could have just been a dream, but what if it was a message from Yahweh? How would we know? Well, since he always seems to confirm his plans, maybe he would send confirmation. Well, guess what? Next, Pharaoh went back to sleep and had a second dream. And what was that dream? Well, let's see. 7. Oh, there we go. Starting off with a 7. 7. With another 7, or can we say a first 7? And well, 7 full ripe ears of grain grew up out of a single stalk, which makes it the second set of 7s. Now after them, 7, another 7 is what it's saying totally. So that's 7 times 2, a total of 14, or 2 7s. And we know 7 is a great number with Yahweh. Well, another 7 with this one will be the 7 ears, thin and blasted by the east wind, which sprang up. And then the thin ones ate up the 7 full ripe ones. Now, at this point, Pharaoh woke up. Now remember, this was Egypt, and they took dreams serious as they thought they were messages from their false gods. Now with that, the next morning, Pharaoh of Egypt summoned all of his false ministers and magicians and wise men, and he told them about his dream. But since it was from Yahweh, and only those that are blessed by Yahweh could interpret what is his visions and his words. Well, none of Pharaoh's men could interpret the dreams for him. But just then, as Yahweh remembers and protects those who are his, well, he reminded the cupbearer of Yosef at this time as it was the right time in the will of Yahweh. Not the former time when Yosef told the cupbearer to remember him. So the cupbearer spoke up and remembered Yosef and told Pharaoh of all that Yosef did for him and how no one else could interpret his dream except for Yosef through Yahweh, and that it all came to pass just as the Hebrew Yosef said it would. So Pharaoh had Yosef summoned, and they brought him out of the dungeon because, well, as we all know here, we would soon see that the saving and the restoration would come of Yahweh's people. Just as when Yeshua was in the cave for 3 days and 3 nights, afterwards he would save and restore his people to Yahweh and protect them all. So now, after they shaved Yosef and changed his clothes, they brought him in to see Pharaoh. So next, Pharaoh told Yosef that he had a dream, but that no one, well, because they weren't into Yahweh, that is, could interpret the dream. And Pharaoh said that I heard that you can interpret it. But just as is a good lesson for us all, to always remember that Yahweh gives us all that we have. And it was not gotten or given to us by ourselves, but by Yahweh. Yosef then said, it isn't me, but Yahweh that will give the answer to his dream, as we should always give Yahweh kavod, honor. So next, Pharaoh told Yosef his dream. And while Yosef told him that both dreams are one and the same, as there will be 7 years of an abundance of crops, followed by 7 years of famine. Also, that the reason there was 2 dreams is because its matters had been fixed by Yahweh and would surely and soon come to pass. So following, Yosef told Pharaoh that he should appoint supervisors over the land of Egypt and receive a 20% tax on the produce of the land during the 7 blessed years, and gather up all the food produced during the good years coming up, and set aside grain under the supervision of Pharaoh to be used for food in the cities, and to store it up, to be used as the food supply for Egypt during the following 7 years of famine, so that the land will not perish as a result of the forthcoming famine. Now, there is also nebuah for us in these end times, as we still have time to store up spiritual oil and a strong foundation in Yahweh and Yeshua before the famine of his true word comes as it's been. Because if we are not strong in him, we won't easily be into his will, but we will easily be given into the ways of Antichrist and given to accepting the ways of the beast. So always be bold for Yahweh and listen to and for him. And following on, continuing on, Pharaoh next told Yosef, since Yahweh showed you all this, there is no one discerning and as wise as you. And you shall be in charge of my household, and all my people will be ruled by all that you say. And only when I rule from my throne will I be greater than you. That is what Pharaoh said. And Pharaoh took off his signet ring and gave it to Yosef, and had him clothed in fine linen, and a gold chain placed around his neck, and presented him with the second best chariot. And they cried and bowed down before him. See, you have to understand how much wisdom that Yahweh blessed Joseph with, especially since Pharaoh seen it to give him this opportunity. See, you have to realize that Joseph had to be a man to know the plan of how from Yahweh to store up these things, and how to make sure that when he stored them up, that the rodents, the pests, and anything else wouldn't go over there and mess with the abundance that was stored up. Because you can have a great abundance of something, but if you get different things in there to deteriorate from it, or mess it up, or plague it, then all of that saving up and storing meant nothing. So he had to know how to portion it out, how to maintain it, contain it, and to make sure that it was safe at the same time. So you can clearly see the parallel to Yeshua here, as he became ruler over all of us and was placed at the right hand of Yahweh and was riding on a white horse with all of his. And if that's not enough, next, Pharaoh gave Joseph a wife, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, and Yahweh gives Yeshua all of his people as a bride to Yeshua. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, around the same age of Yeshua at his time at the start of his ministry. And during the 7 good years, Joseph stored up so much that they eventually stopped counting because it was beyond measure. such as the blessings that Yahweh gives to us through Yeshua. Now Joseph had 2 sons born to him. The first one, Manasseh, which meant causing to forget, because Yahweh caused him to forget all of the troubles he suffered because of his family. And the second son, Ephraim, fruit, because Yahweh made him fruitful in the land of his misfortune. So next, the 7 bad years came, and all peoples from other countries came to be fed from Egypt. Just as Yahweh showed Joseph it would happen, it truly did come to pass. Now Yisrael knew that there was food in Egypt, so he sent his 10 sons, minus Benjamin, Joseph's full brother, because he was afraid something would happen to him. And as he must have now, since the death of Joseph, had been Yisrael's favorite son, or been since he was from his beloved wife, Rachel. So as Joseph's brothers arrived in Egypt, and it was Joseph who sold the goods to all, well, they arrived and prostrated themselves on the ground before him. He then recognized his brothers after all of those years, but he acted as a stranger to them and spoke harshly to them. See, I know a lot of people wonder why when he recognized his brothers, didn't he reveal himself right then and there? Well, remember this, they came down there and bowed to him. And remember his vision in the beginning, which his brothers envied him from and had hate for him from, was that they would come down and bow to him. So I'm assuming that out of respect and being a righteous man, he didn't want to make them feel like they were below, or to understand that this came to pass right then and there, because he wanted to have respect and it showed love to his fellow brethren, not to make them feel lower and lesser than him, and that they see that this is actually coming to pass right then and there. So he waited till it was the right time to reveal himself. And then finally he heard where they were from, but they did not recognize him. Now remember, they bowed to him, and long ago Joseph received a dream where they would sow. So just then Yahweh fulfilled a vision and a prophecy, and Joseph then remembered it. Thus Joseph had a plan, and he called his brothers spies. And they said they weren't, and that they were 12 brothers. One was dead and another remained at home with their father. So he told them to prove it. That they were not spies, that they had to remain detained, and to send one of them to bring their youngest brother back to prove it. So he put all of them in prison for 3 days. And after 3 days, he told them he feared Yahweh, and to let one of them remain in prison while the rest take back provisions to relieve their families, and to bring back the youngest brother to prove that what they said was real. And at that point, they would not die. Now they recognized that they must be suffering all of this because of what they did to Joseph earlier in high life. So they had Shimon be the brother that remained, and later, as they reached their father, Yisrael, things would soon come to light. So next, they told Yisrael all that had happened, and that they had to bring back their youngest brother. But Yisrael at first declined, as to not lose another son, as it would bring him gray hair down to Sheol with grief. But after they finished all that was given to them, I guess it was at this point that they had no choice, as the food diminished, because the famine was great. And so Yisrael told them to bring to Joseph some of the land's best produce as a gift, and to take twice the amount of money, and to pay back what was given, and to pay for what will be given. So they returned to Joseph. Now, as Joseph saw Benjamin, he told his household manager to bring them into his house and prepare a beautiful meal for all. But his brethren were scared and questioned his household manager. But he made them feel secure about the money that they had that was returned to them. So next, they brought Shimon out to them. Next, as they were in Joseph's house, he saw Benjamin and blessed him with, "May Yahweh be good to you, my Ben." But then Joseph left the presence as it was too much for him, seeing his family and hearing his father was still alive, and seeing Benjamin, that he went to his room and cried. And as he cleaned up and returned, and eventually they all were drinking and enjoyed themselves with him. Now, following, he ordered his manager to fill their packs with food and put each man's money back in their packs, and to put his goblet into Benjamin's pack. Now at daybreak, they all took off, but Joseph told his manager to go after them and overtake them before they were far from the city, and to overtake them and ask why they returned good for evil, accusing them of stealing Joseph's goblet and thus finding it in Benjamin's pack. Now Joseph was the perfect example of a righteous man overcoming sins of the land, as too was Yeshua. You see, Joseph was viceroy over a pagan land, Egypt, with many pagan acts, but he overcame them and stayed loyal to Yahweh all the way through. Now, why did Pharaoh charge Joseph over all of the things that he had? Only second to him. Well, because Joseph was blessed by Yahweh and protected by him. And also the reason Pharaoh trusted a man he knew nothing about and was a prisoner was because Joseph answered about interpreting his dream as, "Not I, but Yahweh will see to Pharaoh's welfare." He did not take credit upon himself. Think about that. How many people at that time would have done something like that? How many people today would do something like this? Take credit for something that wasn't theirs instead of giving it to the righteous and the right person who did these things for them or did the act. Think about that. Now, with our Haftorah portion, well, as Yahweh did with Yeshua or Joshua, just as he had Pharaoh's men retrieve Joseph and put new garments and gold on him, so too does Yahweh take and cleanse our dirty, filthy sins and sinful ways. And once he does, he removes the filthy garments from us and says to us, "I have taken away your iniquity from you, and I will clothe you with pure vestments," as he also states in Revelations. As for, "And if you walk in the ways of Adonai and keep his charge, for Yahweh will remove the iniquity of Yisrael in a single day. And in that day, declares Adonai of hosts, every one of you will invite his neighbor to come under his vine and under his fig trees." And as for our gospel portion, well, it is clearly plain to see that Yeshua came and showed that the prophecy given out by the prophet Isaiah were referencing to him, Yeshua. "The Ruach of Adonai is upon me, because he has appointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of Adonai." This is the reason that this is the only portion of it that he read, because the rest of his life and saving would present the rest of Yahweh's master plan. Now, Yeshua also states that a prophet is not accepted in his own hometown. Why, I ask you? Because if they had seen you as you were and grew up with you or raised you, they would act on sight and only remember you as you were. This is why it is harder to convert family and friends than it is to convert a stranger. Always remember this. As there were many in Elijah's days who didn't have faith, so too will there be many in these end times. That is why we must have faith, emunah, and lit, the Ruach HaKodesh guide us to all that are in Yahweh's will. And now we will have the Aaronic blessing. May Adonai bless you and keep you. May Adonai cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May Adonai lift up his countenance upon you and give you shalom. This has been a weekly Messianic Torah portion from Following Yeshua Ministries. For more information, please visit www.followyeshuanow.com.